Ever since Preston FM was launched in 2005, working alongside schools and youth organisations has been a key part of what the radio station is about. When Radio Regen first approached Preston FM about the Connect Transmit project and the opportunity to work with schools in a formal and long-term way, then it was something that really appealed. We know from previous work done at Preston FM that the soft skills of people absolutely improve from being involved in a station like this. And it was really interesting to be able to take that into the school environment and see how it works there as well. The concept was we were going to go in over a 7-8 month period and work quite intensely with the young people and give them radio skills. It was about going in and seeing whether these speaking and listening skills improve, but also about how they relate to other people and how they relate to the communities they come from. What was very interesting was when we actually approached the schools with this idea to see how they would respond. And we picked a couple of schools that we have had relationships with in the past, but again it had been this very kind of short-term approach. So we went to them with the idea and they got very excited because I think they realised as much as we did that the way speaking and listening was currently being done in schools was good and it worked, but it could have been a lot better, and perhaps radio was this way of making it better.
We have our own, the national curriculum gives us a sort of prescriptive way of assessing national curriculum levels. It's broken down into lots of different things. How formally you speak in the right situations, audiences and purposes, that kind of thing. So we're marking levels based on, it's called Assessing Pupils' Progress, APP.
Speaking and listening is worth 20% of the students' GCSE grade. Now, before they get into the GCSE classes, they have very little opportunity to practice those skills, which obviously count towards their final grade. In terms of the Year 9 students, they simply have to have a discussion at the end of the year, which they'll be graded on, or levelled, as it's called in Year 9. So before then, we have very little opportunity whatsoever with the pressures of the curriculum to practice speaking and listening skills. We just expect them to be able to deliver it.
I think the radio gives them a more practical way of doing it. Instead of standing up in a class and talking about the person you'd most like to have a one-to-one with, which is the kind of thing we normally do, they know when they go into the radio they don't think that they're being assessed in terms of speaking and listening. It's a different function altogether, and that sort of assessment function doesn't for them feel like it's part of it, so it's more natural, I suppose.
Well, if I was with a child and said, if you're speaking and listening at school was involved with radio and you knew that somebody was going to hear it, would it be more interesting? And I'm sure they would say, well, actually, yeah, because it would give me a chance to say something. And our kids have said things about, well, nobody listens to us. Well, this gives them a chance to have a platform where people potentially will listen to them. And it will give them more of a motivation to say it right, to say it properly, to do it well.
Well, we started off, our English teacher said, do you want to go to a radio station? And we said, yeah, all right.
She didn't go as much detail, she was like...
No, it was
just like something about...
not many details about it.
I think all we heard was radio, and we said yeah.
We said yeah. And then we ended up getting into a classroom and all doing the brainstorms. And then we repeated that process to make 3 different radio shows. One for Christmas.
A discussion.
A debate show. And
discussion as well, isn't it? Discussion and debate, and one last show.
Yeah, which we've just made.
Yeah, obviously, because you talk in front of people. When you do like your GCSEs, you have a speaking one, obviously in English. It'll help because you feel more confident to be able to do that. You've had experience doing it, which is practice. So the way you speak will be more fluent, and you won't have to hesitate in what you say because you know that people aren't just gonna shoot you down for it.
At the very start of the project, myself and Gary, who was co-delivering this project with me, we actually got together and we sat down and we planned the entire project out. We planned week by week what we were going to deliver, exactly what was going to be covered and what we expected the outcomes to be. Looking back now, that was completely pointless because the way it actually happened had to be different to that. And I think this was the big difference between the short-term engagement and the long-term engagement. Short-term, you have to have a plan. You have to go in there and know, I want to get these skills across in this space of time and this is what the product is. Whereas over the long-term engagement, we found that as workers, we had to be a lot more responsive to the young people involved. We would find that as each session went by, numbers would increase and fluctuate. We'd find what they were interested in would increase and fluctuate. We'd find their energy would be all over the place because it was delivered as an extracurricular activity. then you could never guarantee how the young people were going to feel or whether they actually wanted to be there for that session.
When you go right back to the very first sessions, you wouldn't dream where some of these students are today. A couple of them maybe, but some of the others you wouldn't dream they'd have ever got this far. And they probably wouldn't have had the opportunity, because there's probably nobody in the college would have sort of brought it out. If it wasn't for this project, they wouldn't have got involved. But now, I think we can take it on.
Well, if you look at each of them individually, Alex is very confident and always has been very confident speaking in front of people. But what I felt that she got out of it is she's learned to take turns. She's learned not to shout people down, and she has learned how to listen to other people. And then you've got the polar opposite to Alex, who's Daniel, and Daniel's very, very shy. And what I've been very pleased with is that he stuck with it. I mean, especially when it comes to social situations like that, is that the easiest thing would be just to quit and give up on it because you're shy. But he stuck with it, and I've found in lessons he's therefore more forthcoming with answers in class. He's got to know obviously girls that are in his class as well, and also he's not really afraid to come and speak to me as his teacher. So I found that it's helped the relationships from that point of view as well.
The whole thing, I know this sounds really bad, but personally it's helped me to accept other people's opinions. Like when I came into it, I was quite a my opinion's right kind of thing, but it has helped me to understand other people's opinions, I think.
There are lots of discrete things that the children don't realise, the students don't realise, the teamwork, the ability to listen to somebody. I mean, you know, people who want to be right all the while have got to accept that sometimes they're wrong, or even if they still are right, they can let somebody else be right at the same time. So I've seen children change in terms of cooperation and teamwork, and actually talking to each other and communicating, not sharing with each other who was actually doing which role and when, and then chopping and changing and realise that you can't deliver something at the last minute and it'd be good. And some of them are much better speakers and listeners, and some of them are still a little reluctant but much better than they were. It's a question of level it's like your own personal best, isn't it?
I'd say in terms of confidence, I chose pupils who perhaps are brighter pupils anyway, but the pupils' confidence and the way that they've been able to argue with each other, the way that they've been able to hold conversations with each other, that has really developed from the start of the project. When we look at the Christmas show and the way that they were so nervous and the way they just didn't gel as a team, and I think now they're much more proactive in their approach. They plan things better because they know that they need to plan in order for something to go right. And yeah, I think communication-wise, they've allowed each other to have an opinion. Some of the pupils used to sort of shout each other down when another one was trying to talk, and I think now they're much more. It's a really high-level skill to be able to say, what do you think about that? And that's, you know, the kind of thing that gets you a B grade at GCSE and an A grade, and they're developing that all the time. So I can see really, you know, very, very clearly how that correlates to what they're going to be doing next year at GCSE.
The difference in the pupils has been amazing over the last few months. When we did their first programmes, which was Christmas in 2012, they both had issues, both groups had issues. They went into the studio, they were underprepared, they were underconfident, and some of them lost the way. And, you know, what was really nice about that, even though it did lose its way slightly, the groups themselves recognised that quite quickly and took it on board. And where they are now is a million miles away from where they actually started. The first programme that we made was a Christmas show for each school. The second programme that we made was discussion based. And just to see the difference from that first programme where they argued, people walked out, people got upset, they shouted at each other, and at times it was quite a tense atmosphere. But this discussion show that we did recently, yeah, there were still mistakes. It didn't go absolutely perfectly, but what was really interesting was they were very forgiving of each other's mistakes, and they supported each other a lot more. You know, they urged each other on, they gave each other ideas, and it was just much more disciplined, and that was really nice to see. It was really interesting to see.
Like, and it helps you work on your teamwork and things, and that help you when you go into a job. Like when you go into a job, if you find someone that you don't particularly get on with, skills like that are going to help you do your job.
Well, I always find with the GCSE students, they perform very well in the GCSE presentation, which is getting up in front of the classmates and delivering a 5-minute speech, which is on their own. What I find that they sometimes struggle with is discussion, which is again is one of the other tasks. And that's something which we don't really practice much before they get to GCSE. We just assume we have a 5-minute lesson beforehand and say these are the roles, and go away and get an A. And obviously I don't think they adapt very well to that sort of thing.
In the last session last week, there was actually somebody in the group that said they feel now in a position where they want to pass on their skills. They want to work with pupils from younger age groups and help them make their own radio shows, and that has to be a part of what this project is about. You know, community radio is always going to have a short-term impact because of the way it's funded. You can only have your staff go in there for so long and do the work for low or free costs. That's not practical. So to go in with an idea of sustainability and an aim of sustainability of giving the teachers the skills, giving the pupils the skills to be able to carry on that work themselves is the way forward. And without us even pushing that agenda in this project, that started to happen naturally. So for me, that's been the highlight, that even though it's going to get to a point soon where we actually step away from the school and leave them to it, it's not going to be the end of the school's radio making. They're going to continue. They've got the skills to continue, and hopefully the relationship with the radio station is one that's a little bit more light touch, but still as effective.
I've learned that schools are a difficult place to commit 100% to an extracurricular project. In an ideal world for me, radio or the making radio would be built into every subject at some point in every year. That the RE course might have a couple of weeks where you do a little radio unit, and maths the same, but that's never going to work in many schools. But it's time to build on the skills with children and produce good products, because I believe in good products as well as good process. There were times in this project where I thought it's not good enough to go on air, but we had this argument that, well, they've gone through a process, so community radio is good enough to go on air.
So the current change to English GCSE is that speaking and listening is now going to be a separate qualification. That's what the government wanted to move towards. So what that means is that teachers will not spend too long on that, because what they'll be judged on would be their English language. If it was worked into their English language grade, if it was part of the English language grade, which it is at the moment, I would like to see it be part of the curriculum. That this is a way of delivering. This is 6 weeks. This is a term's worth of work. You learn how the discussion skills, you learn to present, and I think that would be a good way to go, but unfortunately, obviously, we're bound by what the government decides, and they want to keep it separate. So I think it would only work then as an extracurricular activity.
I think we need to get students here to take this on to the next level, start making radio programmes and little films, possibly without your involvement, but then maybe going to you and saying, is this of interest to you? Can we get involved? Is there a little slot you've got where we can put something on each week, or to take us out into the community?
It's good as well for the pupils to meet other people who are actually part of that profession. You know, not just they don't feel then that it's part of. It becomes more distinct from school. It's sort of a more fun activity, an enrichment activity, as opposed to this is part of my English lesson.
Knowing you're going to be on the radio, like, that's pretty cool. 13 and you're on the radio.
Tell them that they'll be on the radio.
Doing shows like The Professionals.
All kids get shown by professionals. All kids want to be famous. They say they don't, but they all do.